and Posner absent.
Next item is to approve the minutes from the meeting of July 21st, 2011.
Good evening, President Taylor and members of the SMUD Board. I'm Richard Markuson. I've spoken to you before. I represent a variety of contractor groups here in Sacramento, including electrical, plumbing, general contractors, ABC, WECA, PHCC, and the Coalition for Fair Employment in Construction. And I know this is not an item that you're going to be discussing tonight, but as I was reviewing your agenda, in particular your SMUD policy BL7, it struck me that your recent decision to build the East Campus under a union-only exclusionary project labor agreement, that there was a disconnect somehow between this policy that is delegated to your general manager and your decision to exclude contractors from bidding on some of this work. And in particular, I mean, we can go down through some of the ones, but a couple of them that stood out to me are the inclusiveness provision that your SMUD procurement practices shall promote inclusiveness of the entire supplier community in its contracting opportunities. Now, there's a lot of debate within the construction community whether PLAs really exclude anybody, but I can tell you firsthand from my contractor members that there are extremely large, very reputable contractors who will not bid under a PLA because of the provisions. Typically the provisions, and we've talked to you about these before, but they are excluded from using their own employees. Many of you I know are probably in business yourself, and I can only imagine that you would not want to enter into a procurement where you're not able to use your own employees, or maybe just a few of them. One of the other provisions requires in some cases duplicate payments. Employers that are not a member of a collective bargaining agreement but have benefit plans that they are already paying for their employees would be obligated, as they are under the SMUD PLA, to also contribute to the union plans, even though their employees that they would be permitted to use would never qualify for the retirement benefits under a union plan because they don't vest. The other thing that I was reading was the provision for best value, and I assume that this means that you are producing the best value of construction or product services for the SMUD ratepayers. And I think that this is another instance where you are violating this provision. In fact, there was a study that was just released this week that analyzed a variety of construction projects for school districts. And while the typical school construction is probably a little bit different than your East Campus, I think that there are some corollaries that you really need to take into account. The report that was generated by National University indicated that for school construction, and they looked, I believe, at over 150 projects, they controlled for some of the variables so that they could actually come up with a viable comparison. They concluded that projects completed under a PLA resulted in 15 to 20% higher costs that are associated with it. And typically those costs are from two fundamental problems, and one of the reasons that we are so adamantly opposed to PLAs, and one is the reduced competition from the contractors, as I have described, who will not bid under a PLA project. And the second thing is the relative complexity of dealing with the multiple bargaining units that are involved in a PLA. You know, we're frequently disputing the efficacy of PLAs and fair and open competition, as many of the groups that I represent are actually actively seeking to prohibit or to enact fair and open competition ordinances throughout California. And I'm sure that if you've read the Bee this week, there's been some interesting discussion there about some of the opponents to the fair and open competition. And while the Sierra Building Trades is not one of the ones that's mentioned, but one of the founding groups of the new Californians Against Identity Theft is none other than the State Building Trades Council, the architect of the PLA effort in California. They are hiding behind this new, similar to the California Unions for Responsible Energy, who hide behind these front groups. They are the ones who are telling California voters that they should not affix their signature to a petition for a referenda or for an initiative because of the chances of having their identity stolen. Anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity. I don't know, Mr. Slayton, if you have a question for me, but I appreciate the chance to talk to you and to remind you again, just around the corner, the new terminal that's being completed at Sacramento Airport, which I believe is about twice the size of your project, was done with a very competitive mix of union and non-union contractors, and that's the model that we would certainly hope that at some point SMUD will want to emulate. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for coming down and your comments this evening.